Hi, I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, White House officials highlighting a significant rise of vaccination rates in the U.S. amid an uptick in coronavirus cases linked to the Delta variant and growing pressure from GOP governors over the Biden administration's border policies. Fox News Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel weighs in on the challenges President Biden faces, the ongoing political fight over face masks, and the sexual harassment scandal surrounding New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Real estate companies and landlords are issuing legal challenges to the Biden administration's eviction moratorium. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal speaks to a California resident facing eviction and a landlord in Connecticut about their concerns over the order and the government's rental relief programs. Plus commentary by former Utah Congressman and host of the Jason in the House podcast, Jason Chaffetz. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcast.com.
I'm Janice Dean.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, August 6, 2021. I'm Chris Foster. Coronavirus cases and hospitalizations are highest, with vaccination rates the lowest in states won by former President Trump. The highest vaccination rates and lowest infection rates are in states won by President Biden.
There will probably be books written, perhaps movies as well, about how this got so politicized and how one party got to be the party of masks and vaccines, and how the other party, in many respects, became the party of more freedom.
We speak with Fox News Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel.
I'm Jessica Rosenthal. The legal fight over a ban on evictions continues as renters hope for more time.
I just sent her, money as it came in. I just kept sending it till I was caught up.
But some landlords say they're hurting too.
Had the assistance program done what it was supposed to do, she would have been caught up on her rent, and they would have helped her the following months going forward to assist her in paying it. They never paid a dime.
And I'm Jason Chaffetz. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
New coronavirus cases and hospitalizations are up 41% in the U.S. over the last week.
The 7-day average of hospital admissions is about 7,348 per day.
That's Centers for Disease Control Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky.
Driven by the more transmissible Delta variant, cases are continuing to rise. These cases are concentrated in communities with low vaccination rates.
And White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator Jeff Zients says half of the new cases and hospitalizations are in 7 states: Florida, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. Now, President Biden, when he first took office, was getting high marks in opinion polls about his administration's coronavirus response. That has slipped some now with all the new cases and the recommendations that everyone in some parts of the country should be wearing masks again in public.
My sense is, part of the pitch early on, the messaging from the White House was, hey, you get the vaccine, you can throw the mask out, and the masks are now back.
Mike Emanuel is Chief Washington correspondent for Fox News Channel.
This is part of the problem of governing. When things get to the president's desk, they tend to be multi-layered, complex problems. And COVID, has an action of its own, an energy of its own. And now that it's mutating into other variants, it's gotten more complicated. And so, now there's kind of a full court press to figure out how can we vaccinate all these other people who have resisted it so far. And so we expect the military is going to basically demand that active duty military get the shot. And the White House would certainly love others to get the shot as well. But it's been a tough sell. And some of it's been the, conflicting messaging coming from the White House or the CDC, and difficult to basically declare victory over this terrible pandemic.
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point what the administration could really do to get more people vaccinated. I guess it's sort of happening on its own as maybe people are seeing on TV or seeing their neighbors or friends or relatives going down with this, even this far into it. Do you think that just opposition to the president in general might be making people, spiteful or distrustful? It's a direct correlation. The states with the lowest vaccination rates and the most hospitalizations all went for former President Trump.
Yeah, I think there will probably be books written, perhaps movies as well, about how this got so politicized and how one party got to be the party of masks and vaccines, and how the other party, in many respects, became the more freedom and so flexibility on masks and flexibility on vaccine. And so, I think there's an argument to be made that you could have, both parties argued early on that your patriotic duty to help your neighbors, to help your friends is to wear a mask and to get the vaccine, and perhaps even branding masks with American flags on them to say it's the American thing to do. But, hindsight's 2020. And obviously these people from both parties were dealing with an epic crisis, killing a lot of Americans in front of them. And so I'm sure a lot of them, when they look back at some point, will say, I wish we had done some things differently. But it's been a massive problem. And it's been difficult to get folks in those red states to get the vaccine. And so, we'll watch the outbreaks as they continue and see exactly what the impact will be down the road.
Yeah, I mean, if I were, watching CNN International or whatever in some country that's 10% vaccinated, I'd be saying, oh, my God, there are people there who can get the shot. They can walk into a store and get it any second they want for free, and they're not getting it. And I'm going to be a year from now getting the shot.
Yeah. And there's been, coverage about all these countries across Africa and other parts of the world that are struggling to get the vaccine and would give anything to have the vaccine. And so Americans in, arguably the wealthiest country on the planet have the freedom, have the flexibility to get it for free. And still some are choosing not to get it. And so I'm sure there are a lot of folks in other parts of the world who are scratching their heads saying, boy, I'd give anything to have that shot.
Yeah, I mean, the administration, I don't think legally could mandate vaccines. Maybe they could, I guess, if you stretched it. But I mean, it's encouraging private businesses, schools, for example, to make those mandates happen if they can. And I wonder if laziness or the desire to go to a Broadway show might win out for some of these people, too. Like, OK, I might not want the shot, but I don't want to get, tested once a week. And maybe I want to go to indoor restaurants if more of those bans come through. I wonder if the administration, if it really got terrible, if they could say, you know what, you can't fly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's been discussion about vaccine passports or that sort of thing, ID cards showing that you're vaccinated, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I think they could tighten the screws a bit on some folks and say, all right, you want to be able to do this, you want all your freedom, well, then you need to do this to ensure the health and safety of your fellow passengers or other folks at the theater or et cetera. And so I think that fight will continue. Because it's been an ongoing struggle and there may be more variants ahead. And so, for those who are kind of banging their heads against the wall saying, what does it take to get people vaccinated? Well, this may be a potential way to do so. It may end up in court, but the short-term effect may be getting more folks convinced to go take a shot in the arm.
Yeah. Something the president has never really gotten a handle on from the beginning, at least as far as public opinion goes, is immigration. Now, record numbers of apprehensions are happening, record numbers of kids coming alone. And this is the dog days of summer when numbers are usually down because it's just so dangerous and hot. Is this another thing where presidents gets too much credit or too much blame, or could they be doing something more or something different to discourage people from coming?
My sense is you're correct that there are a lot of issues where presidents do get too much credit or too much blame, such as the American economy. Sometimes it just goes its own way. I think on immigration, there probably is more that they could do. I think more federal resources rushed to the border, making it perfectly clear that they're going to be taking a tougher stance, I think would have an impact. I think there's a certain amount of not wanting to offend their left flank. And so they've done it in a compassionate way. But when a lot of these migrants took the cue that Joe Biden, who took a soft approach on the campaign trail to illegal immigration, when they saw that he was elected and taking office, a lot of them made a beeline for the border thinking, all right, this is my opportunity. And, look, there are a lot of folks who are risking their lives to do so because their situation in their home countries are awful. But in this case, it's also made it a crisis at the border for the men and women who are charged with protecting the American border and desperately need more resources and more teeth. And we've heard from our reporters on the front lines that, folks have been taken off the patrols because there are so many people they need to process that they're being reallocated to the processing of these people, which means the border is more exposed than ever.
Yeah, I mean, the Biden administration has been saying, look, we're going to try to work on the root causes of this, like you mentioned, people's situations in their home countries. But that's a real long game. I mean, that's something that isn't going to bear fruit until for years.
And I think the fact that Vice President Harris seemed reluctant to go to the border suggested to you that she knew that this was a major problem that may not have easy answers. And so, I think there's been a recognition that this was not a quick fix, and addressing the root causes, as you mentioned, is a long game, a long effort. And certainly, these countries have been troubled for a long time. So helping them, fixing them is definitely going to be a long game.
Well, let's finish by reminiscing, going back to last spring when Andrew Cuomo was sort of America's governor for a minute, those daily coronavirus updates. I mean, even Fox was taking them live, and he's just one governor from one state. It became must-see TV late weekday mornings, and now, of course, a lot of Democrats are just turning their back on him with these sexual harassment allegations from President Biden on down.
Yeah, I mean, he was daytime TV. He was Days of Our Lives. I mean, he was appointment TV for millions of Americans, which is why, the media outlets took him. He was compelling. He seemed compassionate. He was articulate. And then, you fast forward and he's, Democrats would love to run him off. You've got the Senate Majority Leader, a New Yorker, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, the junior senator from New York, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, all saying it's time for him to go. And so it's been quite a fall. And, when you look at the fact that he got a multi-million-dollar book advance, he was a rock star. And it looked like, at one point that if he could have jumped into the presidential race, he might have really given the other Democrats quite a run. But then you see the trouble behind it in terms of the sexual harassment allegations, the very damning report from the New York Attorney General and the team that she assembled to dig into these allegations. And then, of course, the nursing home crisis that was happening while he was doing these briefings. We were unaware of it. It seemed like he had a good handle on the situation and seemed to have a comforting tone. But he has certainly taken a huge fall from the peak of the pandemic and the peak of his power.
Yeah, I mean, even that book deal's under scrutiny, whether he did or didn't use state resources to help get it done. But I mean, about 3 in 5 New Yorkers now say he should go, but that's still 2 in 5 who don't. And if he can power through this somehow, he could theoretically be reelected next year. He's still a Democrat in a blue state.
No question about it. And obviously the Cuomo family name, I grew up in that area. And I remember Mario Cuomo was a longtime New York governor, a pretty legendary figure back in the day. And so the Cuomo name, for a lot of folks who don't pay a whole lot of attention to American politics, it resonates. It's a very familiar name. Name ID is huge. And if people, kind of turning away from politics right now, they're sick of the noise. When he's on the ballot and, the news cycles have flipped a few more times between now and Election Day next year, yeah, he could potentially win again. That is a lifetime in American politics. So we'll see what twists and turns this case will take over that time. But there is no doubt the Cuomo name is huge in New York politics, and who the heck knows what the future will be in terms of the occupant of the governor's position.
Mike Emanuel, Chief D.C. Correspondent for Fox News Channel. Mike, always good to talk to you, man.
Chris, a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
This is Jason Chaffetz with your Fox News commentary coming up.
A legal fight over an extended ban on evictions is playing out in court today. The CDC's continued moratorium on evictions lasted through the end of July, and the Biden administration did not initially try to extend it further after the Supreme Court weighed in, saying such a move required Congress to act. But Congress did not act. So the CDC issued a new, more tailored moratorium on evictions, though it still applies to areas with high COVID transmission, which, with the Delta variant, is most of the country. Before implementing this new rule, President Biden urged states this week to use the rental relief money that the feds have sent out.
We have billions of dollars that we've given to states to provide for rent and utilities for those people who can't afford to stay in their homes because they can't, in an apartment, they can't pay their rent. And so we're urging them to distribute those funds to the landlords.
But it's been slow going. Last week, the Treasury Department said only a small fraction had been doled out. And in the meantime, some landlords say they've had enough.
The eviction moratorium, my tenants were paying the rent, not all the way through, but if they missed 1 month, the next month they pay the rent, and then they pay a portion and a portion. So the minute Governor Lamont came in and said, there's no more evictions, courts are shut down, don't worry about that, that stopped it. That was a zero payment every month for your rent.
Mike Sullivan was a landlord in Connecticut. One of his tenants had begun defaulting on rent before the pandemic and was evicted this past March. His other tenant couldn't make rent due to job loss and eventually moved out to live with a relative.
Now, this is the point that I'm trying to make, and this is why I'm trying to get a meeting, an appointment, a time with Governor Lamont. So I filed my application for rental assistance program. I'm out $34,000 in rent alone. 13 change from one, 20,000 from another. So I filed my paperwork for the rental assistance program. That's all well and good. But if my tenant doesn't do their part, I'm not accepted. So the one tenant who owed me $13,700, she did her paperwork. The other one who owes me $20,000 basically told me, go pound sand. What am I going to help you try to get money for? I'm doing an eviction against him. So he refused to do it. So when my paperwork went in for the rental assistance program, they said, no, if he doesn't put in, I go, why? I have an eviction. I have a court document stating he didn't pay his rent. He's being evicted. Why doesn't that substitute and override him wanting to do the paperwork? Nope, doesn't work. I go, it's ridiculous. So now I'm out $20,000 and I have nothing to do with it. Yep. Well, that's all well and good. The rental assistance program is supposed to take 30 days. I filed both of mine April 26th. Today is the first day I've ever heard from anybody. I finally got a caseworker assigned to only one of my cases. The other one's still in limbo, 101 days.
But you evicted these folks before the pandemic, right? Or like at the very beginning?
No, I just evicted that court. Even though I could go through the eviction court, I couldn't get a court date right away. So my court hearing was in February of this year. So that tenant that owed me $20,000, he just wrote it out and kept looking at me saying, I'm not paying rent. You ain't going to get a dime from me. And come the court hearing, I won my case, and they gave him 30 days to get out, and he left March 15th. My other tenant, who was trying to pay her rent, who would give me whatever she could every month, but because the rental assistance program didn't kick in like it was supposed to, her rent, her arrearage kept growing to the point where she got scared and said, you know what, Mike, I know you want to evict me, and I understand it. I'm not here to cripple you, so I'm going to leave and I'm going to move in with a family member or whatever. And she vacated my house for me. But that was because the assistance had the assistance program done what it was supposed to do, she would have been caught up on her rent, and they would have helped her the following months going forward to assist her in paying it. They never paid a dime. Therefore, she had to leave. So they made her homeless, not COVID, not me, not her, nobody. That program made her homeless, where she had to move in with family.
Who are you in touch with in terms of who's administrating the program in Connecticut, and what's the holdup with them when you're dealing with them?
It's a bank of switchboard operators, and every one of them has told me the same thing. You call the number, Unite CT, rental assistance, please hold, caseworker picks up. All they can do is take your information and say, yes, we'll check on it. I've asked to be switched to a supervisor. I've asked. I couldn't tell you all the different things. That's not in our capability. We'll transfer your case to a supervisor. I said, okay. Well, you could see the last 2 times I called, they did the same thing. No, we can't see that. I said, you have to have an electronic footprint somewhere to see that. No, we don't have all that technology. We are nothing but operators. We're fielding the calls as they come in, and then we assist. Okay, well, to me, it's useless. You're paying for people to do something that you don't need to pay them for, I guess.
Once you filled out the paperwork on your end, who were you submitting that paperwork to? I imagine it was the state, right? The state is handling,
Right.
Some agency with the state is handling the federal rental assistance money and is supposed to be giving it to you, right?
Correct. You file it in through what's called Unite CT. Now, I have the ability of going on and looking at that, each individual case, and you can see it, and it shows that it's 100% complete, each stage of it, and there's like 7 stages that you have to fill out. And it shows that there's 100% completion on all the stages. And then it comes up and it says, case adjuster assigned, none. And then it says, arrearage amount approved, none. And it stays like that. And you can call all the time you want, and you're just not going to get it.
Now, when he said he would ask the CDC to come up with a new eviction moratorium, knowing that legislation would be needed, President Biden said a new order would at least buy the states time to get that rental assistance program more functioning. According to a survey by the Census Bureau done earlier this year, roughly 11 million Americans are behind on their rent. Tenants like Brenda Nenomantivi, and they are still worried.
So I'm a bartender, first of all, and right now I'm bartending at 3 different places. When the first shutdown happened, I was only at 2 places. I was 3 shifts one place, 4 shifts another. So when we got shut down, one of those places applied for the PPP loan, received it, and paid us for 6 weeks. The other place did not. So the PPP allowed them to pay us 15% of our sales for tips, which still, didn't equal to what we would normally make, but it was better than nothing. But that made it so I was ineligible for unemployment.
Got it.
For those 6 weeks, which is when they were doing the extra $600 from the government. However, the other place did not get the PPP, so basically I was only getting half of what I was normally making, so I was unable to pay my bills.
Right. Did you eventually get on unemployment? Did you stop working?
I did. I did. Yeah, they shut us down completely. I didn't have a choice. And I did eventually get on unemployment. Of course, I was one of the lucky ones. I'm sure you've all heard about the unemployment crisis in California. It's been horrific dealing with them. I was one of the ones that they froze my account or whatever they call it due to fraudulent activity. That most of us didn't have anything to do with. That was basically on them, the fraudulent activity, but we all suffered from it. So that put me back again even further. So I did eventually get caught up, and now that we are open and back to work, business is not what it was before the pandemic. People are still scared. People are not coming out. So I'm not making anywhere near what I was making, and I'm working 3 bars.
So how far behind are you on rent at this point?
1 month.
Okay. 1 month is doable, huh?
Yes, it's doable, which I'm like $100 short of that 1 month, but now we're into the 2nd month. So I'm just hoping and praying that, business picks up. I'm also an artist, so I do a lot of art. I sell my art. I do private parties. I do weddings. Anything and everything I can do to make a buck.
How dire did it get? I mean, at some point, were you thankful for the eviction moratoriums? I know there was one at the state level and the CDC's one.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I was 5 months behind on my rent.
Got it. 5 months
and
behind.
My landlord was pissed, understandably so, She still has a mortgage to pay.
How did you work that out with your landlord when you were 5 months behind? Did you say just sit by?
Told her what was going on, and told her that I had the GoFundMe up, and that when people donate, it takes a few days for me to get that money, and I just sent her money as it came in. I just kept sending it till I was caught up.
Did you know other people in your position? I mean, what's the kind of consensus among you and anyone else about what this has been like?
Well, everybody just kind of has the same, consensus. It's like number one, it's the fear of the unknown because nobody knows what's going to happen, and the world we live in today is not the world that we lived in 18 months ago.
And this latest extension of this this eviction moratorium that the Biden administration is pushing for, that the CDC has enacted, it sounds like even if this latest eviction moratorium lasts till October, let's say it does, it sounds like you're telling me that might help in the short term, but in the long term, what's needed is just people to start frequenting bars again, at least in your case.
Yes, absolutely. Well, number one, this is the slowest time of the year for bars anyways. It's summertime. People are camping, they're vacationing, they stay home later because it's light out later, they barbecue, they do all that kind of stuff. And then you add into it, people are still scared, so they're not everybody is coming out yet. And then you add into it the whole mask mandate again here in California, and right. People are tired of that, so that they're, staying home. So just all of it combined. So, I'm just praying for, as summer comes to an end, that people might start coming out more. But I do know a lot of people also have realized over the last year that they don't need to be at the bar as much as they used to be, and that they can save a lot of money being home, and it's okay being home. They've had to learn to live with it. So, it's impacted us heavily.
Brenda Nanomantubi, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
New from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
My name is Kennedy, and welcome to my podcast, which will, I humbly say, single-handedly save the world. You're welcome.
It's Kennedy Saves the World. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. Rate and review the Fox News Rundown on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
Americans of all ages have been enjoying the Summer Olympics, even the littlest ones in a Kansas City, Missouri hospital. St. Luke's Hospital celebrated their newborns with crocheted medals and athlete-inspired outfits for the infants born there during the games. Nurses crocheted garments inspired by the sports represented at the Olympics, including tennis, gymnastics, swimming, basketball, and more. One of the nurses, Stephanie Patterson, crocheted 20 gold medals for the babies for the event that culminated in a mini Team USA assembly. She said no one planned on delivering their baby in a pandemic, and the last year has been really tough on everyone. She says she hopes this is something the families and baby can look back on over the years as something that made their delivery during the pandemic even more special and brought them hope and encouragement. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary.
Jason Chaffetz.
What's on your mind?
The bad judgment calls continue to pile up just 7 months into the Biden administration. President Joe Biden's tenure is increasingly characterized by poor personnel choices, ethical lapses, and disastrous policy decisions. Simply put, judgment is Biden's biggest flaw. Biden began his presidency by selecting the unpopular former presidential candidate and California Senator Kamala Harris as his vice president. He followed that with the selection of an eco-terrorist to run the Bureau of Land Management, an anti-gun lobbyist to run Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and an underqualified pro-abortion extremist to run the Department of Health and Human Services. Perhaps Biden's biggest mistake to date has been his disastrous border policies. He quickly reversed innovative solutions embraced by the Trump administration that were working to keep communities and immigrants safe. By reversing the Remain in Mexico policy, ending construction of the border wall, and shipping COVID-positive migrants to every corner of America, Biden signaled to criminal enterprises around the world that America was open for their kind of business. Furthermore, his faulty judgment on foreign policy continues to baffle. Russia gets an energy pipeline to Europe. Iran gets to continue and fund its nuclear program. The Taliban gets to retake Afghanistan. Under Biden, we are no longer energy independent. Tax and regulatory burdens have gotten heavier. Crime has increased as a direct result of bad policy calls by Biden, which will impact the economic well-being of cities and businesses upon which underprivileged Americans rely. This is not a one-time problem, but a chronic condition. Biden simply doesn't have the judgment to empower America or improve our future. I'm Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor and the host of the Jason in the House podcast.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network, subscribe and listen to the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Former federal prosecutor and four-term U.S. Congressman from South Carolina brings you a one-of-a-kind podcast. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.